Hello, this is Tim, and I've been having a chat with Jan, who was one of the people on the circle. Like me, she was a finalist, though not in my series. She was a finalist in the original pilot edition, which I think she actually won. So she did better than me. We were talking about COVID. Jan had COVID and has more recently had this extraordinary fatigue, which are now well documented as a consequence of this disease. So, look, the important message is, if you're not taking COVID seriously, then you're wrong, and you need to. If you haven't got a good supply of masks, go out and get them. We need to be prepared, and we need to be aware if we are going to be resilient. And we can be resilient. We can overcome this thing. But we won't do so unless we all work together. So that really is the message. And quite a serious video, really. But as ever, delightful to chat with Jan, who I chat with quite often, and it's always a pleasure.
I've just been very run down, my darling.
I'm sorry.
I had this awful post-COVID fatigue.
Yeah,
and I don't think people have been talking about it very much.
Well, we can.
But I've just been incredibly run down. I know. I mean, I had COVID back in March.
Yeah.
Probably February, March. I went to see my GP at the end of February, and I had some breathing issues. Nothing drastic, but I just didn't feel that I was 100%.
Yeah.
And far from being a hypochondriac, that they always say that if you've got anything that worries you, go and see a GP. Yeah. Well, it was worrying me because I get very out of breath.
Mm-hmm.
Very easily.
You're sounding a bit out of breath now.
Yeah. No, I'll come to that in a minute, my lovely. Because I tell you what,
because of me, isn't it?
I think because the majority of people are covering the main issue, which is if you get COVID-19, are you going to end up in a hospital? Or are you going to end up on a ventilator? And now, if this virus affects your breathing, it stands to reason that if you get it and you're supposed to get this mild version, that is going to affect your breathing as well. Now, I would like to say that I came out unscathed, but I'm so not. I've been just exhausted. Yeah. Having looked at all of the results physically, on this, blood's fine, your blood pressure's great. For a short, fat redhead in her 50s, you're doing okay. However, what you are, you're symptomatic of post-COVID virus.
Right. Would you compare this with things like ME or
Well, I think for me it's always been. When it initially came out, yuppie flu, and it was kind of synonymous with the fact that people were on burnout, so they had no energy. For me, it just feels like someone's pulled the plug on me, and I try. Yesterday, I had a good day. I did have a good day. I felt a little bit more buoyant. I felt more with it. I felt, this is great. I could do some things. And then I do that. I run around. I went to Canterbury and I'm, dropping things off. And I'm doing all the things that I think a normal person would do. Some people would say that I'm probably overdoing it. But for me,
No,
I'm happy to do.
I know you from before COVID, and I know how lively you are.
Yeah.
So
very sociable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it lends itself to you just. I took back to my bed yesterday afternoon. I got up in the morning. I was feeling a bit jaded. I got to a point I thought I need to sleep now, and I went back to bed. And I didn't get up till 2:30.
Well,
I don't
the problem
realise.
is that people sometimes, I think a lot of people are getting this back to front and they're thinking it's about lockdown. It's actually about a very dangerous disease.
Yeah.
And if they stop thinking about this whole lockdown nonsense, whether it's rule of 6 or whether it's lockdown itself, it doesn't really matter. It seems to me there's a legal issue here. If we call it lockdown, then the government might be thinking that they have to provide another furlough pile of cash. If we call it the rule of 6, then you're all on your own. And they can get on with their Brexit negotiations, which all seems a little bit duplicitous, but there we are. It's very sad to think that I actually approve of Boris, or should I put that in the past tense? I certainly don't. I certainly would never approve of Cummings. I mean, I just think, you know, he's a man who's misnamed. He should be called Goings, and or Doings. And there's lots of doings that he shouldn't be doing. We just need him to go.
You know, usually when you look at the people who are in, like I call them the powers that be. And of those who shall be listened to and complied with. When you think about the job that they've got, I don't know what information they're getting. When you see your medical expert, you know, I'm talking to a doctor who's she's not an expert on COVID. But she said she's seen people, same situation I'm in, absolutely not bandied by this.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be hospitalised. See, I can't get the breath, right? You don't have to be hospitalised to make this something that that's going to drag out. She said this could last up to a year.
Yeah.
No, that's ridiculous. You know, anything that you have, a virus normally you get over it. You get a bit of post-viral fatigue, maybe then you move on. I've had bronchitis in my 20s.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've been given an asthma pump.
My goodness, yes.
I was given this asthma pump because of my breathing. The very first time. And does it fill me full of joy? No. But I've got this, she said, to help me, to try and help me to breathe properly. Now, I've been a singer. I've sung on stage. I've done my performances. Tim, if I was doing a performance in a pantomime right now, and which I've done, and you and I both know how it takes that out of you, I'd have to walk away.
Yeah.
Because I can't do that singing. I couldn't sustain that level of commitment, the performance. I couldn't do it. But that's one thing. I'm thinking of all the singers out there, and I know singers in really, really good, recognised, popular, high-profile bands who have been very vocal about the fact that they don't believe that wearing a mask is the answer. They don't believe this. All I would say to the people who are in that profession, if you ever got COVID, you would find that your level of performance would deteriorate possibly by about a good 50% because you can't get a full lungful of air. And this isn't at the time. This is months later. So it's all very well saying, oh, I don't want to wear a mask. Put a mask on. At least meet someone halfway. Wear a mask Don't drop this. This is a conspiracy theory. This is a way of the government controlling us. What does the government get out of you wearing a mask? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, this isn't about we're gonna. You achieve nothing.
If more of us were kept these rules, then maybe there would be less people having to run around the place and police the silly stuff. So they could actually get on with making sure the bureaucracy, which stinks, was beginning to work. You know, we need people. We need people to stop looking after us and looking after this, assuming that we're going to be badly behaved. We need those people to get on and do something to help us. We need to make sure that the new systems, the new normal, is working, and it's not at the moment because they're so busy trying to make us stay safe. And if we just recognised this is our responsibility, and then they can get on with something more important.
We're all in this. We are all in this together.
Well, sadly, that's exactly the point, Jan. I don't think we are all in this together. I think there's a substantial amount of our society across the world that thinks this is something that isn't going to affect them, and it may not affect them. It will affect the people that they meet, and they're putting other people in danger. Number one, practically, but number two, they're taking resources away from the powers that be that could and should be used elsewhere to actually make systems which have never worked properly. No. We now need those systems, and you know, we could say, okay, you haven't made your education system work effectively. You've had years to do it. You haven't managed to do it. Well, yeah, now we need to make sure it does it, and which means we need all resources we can get. And the same with the NHS, the same with the police force. We need all the resources we can get. We don't need them messing around, going around to people having parties of 8 people. This is such a waste of resources. So, you know, we need some people.
It's ludicrous.
Grow up.
You know, how could you expect our police service, our police forces, to be knocking on people's doors and saying, I understand you've got 7 people in your back garden? I couldn't think of anything more ridiculous ever.
Well, I could.
And we all have a duty. We all have a duty. And it's a duty of care.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you don't want to protect yourself, and you say, I don't want to wear a mask, like you say, this isn't about you. Yeah. This is about how you affect other people.
And it's wider than the immediate group, because while you are parading your defiance, you know, like silly people like Piers Corbyn, while they are parading their defiance, they're taking away resources, and those resources can be better spent elsewhere. You know, just as
those same people, Tim, will be complaining that they can't get to see their GPs because they've got to do an e-consultation, they've got to ring 111. If it escalates, they've got to go to A&E. Like I had to do the other day. Yeah. I don't want to be in A&E. I don't want to be there. You know, it felt wrong because for all my life I've been told you don't put yourself in A&E unless you really need it. Yeah. And the neediest people, you know, if they're wheeling them in on a trolley and they're on oxygen or they've been CPR or whatever, they're needy. Me, I go there with a breathing problem and I'm fatigued. How ridiculous that I'm ended up in a situation where I'm being tested over hours. I have no complaint about how I was treated and the speed with which I was dealt with, because they were amazing. But I just think, you know, stop bleating about you wearing a mask. Stop bleating about having to sanitise your hands. Stop bleating about all these things. The government aren't trying to control us by making us wear a mask. Let's face it, we're on how many different cameras per day? I think it was someone said we are recognised on 340 cameras if we go out one day around town in our neighbourhood. 340 cameras. They don't want us in masks. They want to be able to see our faces.
Absolutely.
You know, and if they were doing this, how is this controlling us? How is this getting anything sensible and rational? It's not. It's a reasonable request so that we're not spraying, we're not talking, we're not doing that, we're protecting other people. And if my 20-year-old daughter can keep sanitising herself and me and everyone around her, wear a mask to protect her grandparents who are unwell, if she can
there we are, conspiracy theories aside.
It's not difficult.
You know, what incredible brilliance. If the government wanted to control us, the last thing it would be doing would be to get us to wear a mask, because that way it can't see us on the multitude of cameras around our towns and cities. Such perception. So impressed. You know, but beyond conspiracy theories and all this sort of nonsense, and you know, the other day the people were protesting in Trafalgar Square. These people are irresponsible in my mind. They're taking resources that could be used elsewhere. We need the authorities, the powers that be, to actually do some serious work and make our system, our society, work harmoniously. It seems to me that we've got into a position where we are using the language of choice. We're still using the language of choice, but increasingly our society is becoming autocratic, very authoritarian, because it's frightened. It doesn't need to be like that. We need the people who are doing this work. We need to have them. They need to know that they are supported, and if they know that, then maybe we can work more harmoniously together. I've seen a change in the last year towards the sort of societies that I know in Eastern Europe, and those societies, they don't use the language of choice. It is very clear. If somebody barks at you, you do it. So we're confused in the West. We're very confused. We need to adjust to the new normal, and we need, I think the new normal can be one of liberty. It doesn't need to be one of tyranny. But for that to happen, we need to work together. And we need to recognise that this is a serious disease, and these are serious days. So, Jan Parastika, get well soon. And, generally. Oh, and a Happy New Year to everybody who's celebrating the